So let's look at the second pattern for integrating Azure DevOps and OpenShift. Rather than the OC extension this time, you could use the Kubernetes extension present within Azure DevOps. OpenShift supports the kubectl tool, which is essentially underlying the Kubernetes extension here, as much as the OC tool. So in much the same way we have seen the OC extension work, the Kubernetes extension works in a similar way. Now again, the pattern here is we have an Azure hosted agent. We are going to focus on the Kubernetes extension to interact with OpenShift, but I'm also including the Helm extension in this second pattern as it is another supported manner of deployment in OpenShift. The app which we'll deploy here is the Space Game, and this is a Microsoft example. It consists of a couple of services. Here you see where we've sort of run the job. The Space Game will sort of, it appears as a UI like that, and it's got a couple of services, a front end and a back end if you like. So this is what you're going to see. There is some setup involved in Azure DevOps. I've got the Azure hosted agent. In this example, I'm using the Azure Container Registry as well, so I've needed to create a container registry connection. I've needed a Kubernetes environment set up, as well as a Kubernetes service connection. The key steps in the pipeline that you'll see will be doing a git clone, doing a Docker build and pushing that image to the Azure Container Registry, creating an image pull secret, and then finally deploying to the Kubernetes, or in this case, the OpenShift cluster. Within OpenShift, I've created a project, a service, and that token is being used to log in. I guess the key difference in this second pattern compared with the OpenShift extension is you really are working with the core Kubernetes objects, and you will need a little more work to build a YAML as part of your project. You can also see here where you're making use of the Azure Container Registry and needing that service connection set up. There is now a managed OpenShift service in the Azure Marketplace called Azure Red Hat OpenShift, which is available jointly and is jointly supported by Azure and Red Hat, providing a cloud consumption model. So let's have a look at the demonstration. So the second pattern I want to show you is the Kubernetes pattern that we discussed. And this is where we've got an Azure hosted agent. We also going to do a number of steps. We've got using the Kubernetes service connection, we're using Kubernetes environment concepts, and we're actually we're also working with the Azure Container Registry. The app I'm sort of working with here is actually sort of a Microsoft example. If came from the Azure website, it's the Space Game. It's got a couple of different sort of services running. It also has got sort of manifests built for OpenShift here and Kubernetes. So you can see within the manifest, it's got some deployment YAML. So all the YAML sort of has been built ahead of time. So let's go into that pipeline. So here, what we're doing here is essentially doing a build job. We're actually sort of doing some Docker tasks here. So we're going to build it sort of within Azure DevOps, publish it under the to the Azure Container Registry, and then essentially use the Kubernetes manifest job, which is an inbuilt task in here. You can see sort of deploy to Kubernetes. You also got kubectl options in there as well, but we're using that task to actually interact with OpenShift. Similarly, like the OpenShift service connection, we do need a Kubernetes-based service connection, and within here, I'll show you I would sort of elect to use Kubernetes if I was going to create a new one. So within here, the Space Game stage I'm using is using the same sort of server URL. It's rather than sort of the actual token, you have to get the whole secret essentially and sort of paste it in there, and then it sort of will connect to OpenShift. OpenShift being sort of the enterprise Kubernetes, all the Kubernetes APIs are exposed. So that is no problem there. So let's go back to the actual pipeline. and we will kick that off. So within the job as well, it actually has pushed those container images into my Azure container registry as well, with the sort of latest build of 100. So that now pipeline is complete, and you can see we have had access all run.